I had read about La Dernière Nuit online, a secretive, high-end restaurant with a terrifying reputation. The website had no menu, just a warning. An unforgettable dining experience. Once seated, you must stay until the end. Intrigued, I made a reservation. When I arrived, the entrance was down an unmarked alley. A single flickering lantern cast eerie shadows. The maitre d', an unsettlingly thin man with sunken eyes, greeted me. "Monsieur Carter, welcome. Your table is ready." The dining room was dimly lit, with only a few other guests, silent, stiff. The air smelled of something metallic, almost like rust. The waiter, pale and emotionless, placed a single dish before me. Raw meat, nearly black, glistening under the candlelight. I hesitated. "What is this?" He smiled. "The chef's special. You'll find it unique." As I chewed, a strange warmth spread through my body. My limbs felt heavy. The faces around me, previously blank, now bore expressions of horror. Mouths open in silent screams, eyes pleading. My vision blurred, and the room seemed to pulse. The maitre d' returned. Ah, the transition begins. Panic surged through me, but my body wouldn't respond. My reflection in the silver plate twisted. I looked pale, gaunt, my eyes sunken like his. I tried to scream, but no sound came. Around me, the other diners began to smile. I finally understood. The restaurant didn't serve food. It served souls. And now I was on the menu. I struggled to move, but my limbs felt trapped in invisible restraints. The maitre d' watched with cold amusement. "It always takes a moment to settle in," he said. My breath came in short, panic bursts. My mind screamed at my body to stand, to run, anything, but I was paralyzed. Around me, the other diners' smiles widened, their teeth unnaturally sharp in the dim candlelight. Then, the kitchen doors swung open. A figure emerged, a towering chef in a stained white uniform, his face obscured by a cracked porcelain mask. He carried a long, curved knife, the blade whispering against the table as he passed. "Fresh tonight," the maitre d' announced, gesturing to me. The diners clapped, a slow, rhythmic sound that made my stomach twist. The chef leaned down, his masked face inches from mine. His breath reeked of blood and decay. "We take only what is given," he murmured, his voice a deep rasp. "And you, monsieur, have given yourself." No, I didn't." The maitre d' must have seen the realization in my eyes. "You made the reservation," he said, his voice velvety and cruel. "You agreed to stay until the end." I tried to protest, but my throat burned, my voice stolen. My reflection in the silver plate distorted further, skin tightening over bone, eyes hollowing out. I was becoming one of them. A thought pierced through my terror. There has to be a way out. With every ounce of strength I had left, I forced my fingers to move. Just a twitch, but enough. My hand knocked over my wine glass. The dark liquid spilled across the table, its scent sharp and bitter. The reaction was immediate. The diners recoiled, their smiles twisting into snarls. The chef hissed, stepping back. The maitre d's expression flickered, the first crack in his perfect composure. I didn't understand why, but I didn't care. I used the distraction to push my chair back, forcing my legs to move. They felt like they belonged to someone else, stiff and unsteady, but I ran. The maitre d's voice echoed behind me. "You can't leave, Monsieur Carter. The meal isn't over." I crashed through the dining room, past the silent guests, past the flickering lantern at the entrance. The alley stretched before me, impossibly long. My chest burned, my vision swam, but I kept running. Then cold air, streetlights, cars, noise. I stumbled onto the pavement, gasping. When I turned back, the alley was gone. Just a brick wall where the entrance had been. I ran home and locked every door, every window. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. My body felt wrong, as if something had been taken from me. Days passed. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, until the hunger started. Not for food, for something else. And deep inside, I knew I hadn't truly escaped. I never should have taken the reservation. It was a slow night at Donati's, the Italian restaurant where I worked as a server. We were about to close when the phone rang. "Donati's, how can I help you?" A voice, low and hoarse, spoke. "Table for one. 11:45 p.m. I hesitated. We closed at midnight. But something about the voice, it sent a chill through me. Still, I confirmed the booking. Big mistake. At 11:40 p.m., the restaurant was empty except for me and the cook, Marco. As I set the table, I noticed something odd. The guest was already here. A tall man in an old-fashioned black suit sat at the far end of the restaurant. I hadn't heard the door open. He sat perfectly still, his pale hands folded neatly on the table. I forced a smile. "Good evening, sir. Can I start you off with something to drink?" His head tilted slightly. "Water," he whispered. His voice sounded wrong, like a recording played in reverse. I nodded and hurried to the kitchen. Marco frowned. "Who are you talking to?" "The late reservation." Marco's face went pale. "What reservation?" I glanced back at the dining area. The man was gone. I rushed to the table. Untouched silverware. The chair still warm. A chill crept up my spine. "Did you see him leave?" Marco shook his head. "No one's come in for an hour." I turned back to the host stand. The reservation book was open. My own handwriting stared back at me. 11:45 p.m., table for one. But beneath it, something new had appeared, written in shaking, unfamiliar letters. "See you soon." We closed early that night. I never took another late reservation again. For days, I tried to convince myself it was a prank, a mistake, anything but real. But deep down, I knew better. The nightmares started soon after. Every night, I was back at Donati's, standing in the empty restaurant. The lights flickered, the air thick with the scent of old wine and something rotten. And he was always there, sitting at the same table, hands folded, waiting. In the dream, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The only sound was the slow, deliberate scrape of a chair, pulling out across from him, as if inviting someone to sit. Then one night, I woke up, but I wasn't in my bed. I was at Donati's. The restaurant was dark, the chairs stacked, the doors locked. Yet, somehow, I was standing by table 7, and he was sitting there. This time, I saw his face. Sunken skin, hollow eyes, lips stretched too wide in a grin. His hands, too long, too pale, tapped the table in a slow rhythm. "Sit with me." I stumbled back, heart pounding. I reached for my phone, but my pocket was empty. The man's grin widened. "You made the reservation, didn't you?" I turned and ran toward the door. Locked. The windows wouldn't budge. Behind me, the chair scraped louder. He was getting up. A cold breath touched my neck. "You can't leave." I screamed, and woke up, in my bed, drenched in sweat. I gasped for air, clutching my sheets. Just a nightmare. But then I heard it, the restaurant phone ringing. I checked the time, 11:45 p.m., and on my nightstand, a reservation book, open, my handwriting. A new entry had appeared beneath the last one. Table for two. I had never believed in ghosts. That changed the night I worked at La Sombra, an old restaurant on the outskirts of town. I was desperate for a job when I found the listing. Night shift cleaner needed. High pay. No questions asked. That should have been my first warning. When I arrived, the restaurant was already closed. A thin, pale man named Mr. Ruiz handed me a set of keys. "Just clean the floors, wipe the tables, and never," he hesitated, his eyes darting toward the back of the restaurant. "Never touch table 7. I chuckled. "Why?" "Just don't," he whispered before leaving. Alone in the dimly lit restaurant, I started mopping. The place smelled of old wood and something foul. Like meat left out too long. The air was heavy, suffocating. Then I noticed it. Table 7. Unlike the others, it was set for one guest. A single plate, a silver fork, and a tall, untouched glass of red wine. The chair was slightly pulled back, as if someone had just left. I ignored it at first. But as I cleaned near the bar, a whisper crawled through the empty space. "Sit." I froze. My heart pounded. Maybe it was the wind. "Sit with me." The voice was soft, inviting. But the restaurant was empty. I turned toward table 7. The chair had moved. It was now fully pulled out. Waiting. Cold sweat ran down my back. I had to get out, but something compelled me forward. My legs moved against my will. I reached for the chair. A hand grabbed mine. I screamed. The hand was ice-cold, skeletal, its grip like iron. I yanked away and stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The restaurant shifted. The walls darkened, the candles flickered, and a shadowy figure sat at table 7. I couldn't see its face, just deep, sunken voids where eyes should be. "You broke the rule," it rasped. I ran. The door was locked. The windows wouldn't budge. The air grew thick with the stench of rot. Then silence. I turned. The table was empty again. the chair tucked neatly in place. But something was different. The glass of wine was now half empty. I never returned. The next day, I found another job. But sometimes at night I hear it. Sit with me. For weeks, I tried to forget that night. I convinced myself it was exhaustion, a trick of the mind. But the nightmares wouldn't stop. Every night, I dreamt of table 7. The chair pulled back, the untouched plate, the voice whispering, closer each time. Then strange things started happening. I woke up one morning to find a single glass of red wine on my kitchen table. I lived alone. My doors were locked. The next night, my phone rang at 3:07 a.m. A whisper on the other end. Sit with me. I threw the phone across the room. The final straw came a week later. I was walking home from my new job when I passed a small, empty cafe. Through the window I saw it. Table 7. Identical. Same plate, same fork, same glass of red wine. The chair slightly pulled out. Waiting. I ran home and locked every door. That night, I barely slept. But when I woke up, I wasn't in my bed. I was sitting at a table. A single plate in front of me. A fork. A full glass of red wine. Across from me sat the shadowy figure. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine. It lifted its glass as if to toast. You finally joined me. I tried to move, to scream, but my body wouldn't respond. I was trapped. And the worst part, I could feel another presence behind me, pulling out the chair, waiting for the next guest.